I'm going to share on a topic tonight that, well, to a request that was in the chat. I'm also getting better at not using names when I talk because I'm being recorded. Um, Thinking, feeling, talking about mistakes, about fight or flight, about being numb. One of the topics that has come up a lot this week, and that's the stars that I try to follow, is usually, believe it or not, there is this energetic thing that happens. And a lot of our sessions, my team will agree to this, it's kind of magical. A lot of our sessions will have a similar theme. And I know you guys, some of you have asked me if I have superpowers. And yes, I do. However, um, it is also a collective consciousness. So being able to know that we are not alone is one of the reasons this meeting has been going on for 6+ years. Because sometimes I feel like it's all me and I'm crazy or I'm depressed. And what I realize and what I know is I'm not the only one. And while that's like, I'm not trying to sound doom and gloom, there is some type of validation in I'm not the problem. So that's why I like to bring that up. In reference to mistakes, numbness, fight or flight, the theme that has come up this week for myself and last week, as well as many of my the support that I've given for healing, has been around surviving and remembering that when I'm surviving, I'm not healing. But please, if you hear that as judgment, I want to invite you to lean in a little bit, because that's not what I'm saying. It is more about validation and honoring that when I am surviving, if I'm running in circles trying to heal, it's not going to work. And it doesn't have anything to do with how strong I am or how long I've been in recovery or I've put 20 years together in ACA. That really doesn't matter, unfortunately, because I would try to pull that card every day if it did. The part of our brain that keeps us alive is not the same part of our brain that allows us to heal. And when that part of our brain is driving the bus, the amygdala, the lizard brain, the part of our brain, right brain, is where healing happens. So when I notice I'm in a state of survival, which many of us go in and out of, one of the requests was fight or flight responses. When I'm living in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that is just an indicator that I'm in a survival state. And when I'm in a survival state, that is not an invitation for me to say, oh my God, I can't get my shit together. I also don't get to choose when I'm in a survival state. That is happening because there's a part of my backstory that's being triggered in the present moment that hasn't had the opportunity to heal. There is still an injury, and many of us, this is why if you hear us talking about recovery, there is this inference that it's lifelong, because it is. And that doesn't mean I don't have good days and I don't feel the healing. What it does mean is life happens. Loss happens. There are many transitions of deaths and rebirths through our life that put our body in and out of survival mode. And we don't get, unfortunately, because I'm a recovering control addict, and if anybody could do it, I feel like I would be up there. I don't get to decide when I'm in survival and when I'm not. The sucky part about that is survival doesn't look the same for everyone. For some of us, we look like we got our shit together. For some of us, it might look like, I can't do two things at once. Hold, please. I had to let somebody in. For some of us, it looked running the family, running the business, maybe running two businesses. Yes, I'm talking about myself. Survival mode also always doing shit, ADSing, doesn't look the same for everyone. It's also why codependency gets praised and we live in it so long. Because for some of us, surviving is very beneficial to other people. It's only when there's consequences that we start to notice this isn't okay. I've been living in this too long. And that's either creating consequences for me, which is usually the case, and or consequences for other. The consequences for me are almost always happening, whether I acknowledge them as that or not. The consequences for others will happen the longer I stay in survival. In my personal program, ACA, Adult Child of Alcoholic and Dysfunctional Families, you do not have to come from an addicted family to qualify. What that looks like is my default is survival. My default is not peace. My default is not find a place of contentment and meditate. I work really fucking hard to meditate. And if you're one of my clients, we work a lot on that. And it looks really different than us. But the reason that I bring this up is because survival doesn't always look the way we think it looks. Like after a loved one, the weeks after when we're struggling to function. That absolutely can be survival. But survival looks like a lot more than that because it can also be functional freeze, much like functional alcoholic. We are able to be masterful at hiding pain. And it's not about hiding it from the world. Sometimes it is if there's consequences. I work harder to hide the pain from me than I do from anybody else. And as humans, what we're trying to do is not be in pain. Physical pain and emotional pain. Remember this, if you get nothing else from tonight. The nervous system does not know the difference in physical pain and emotional pain. Why is that important? That's important because if you identify as someone with complex PTSD, you're going to have both of those pains. Because unfortunately, when trauma is stored in our body for decades, that manifests as things like autoimmune disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Emotional pain and physical pain they're not differentiated by the nervous system. And the reason that's important is because some of us can be living in survival and not have an awareness that that's the state I'm living in. And if I'm trying to do healing work, I'm going to be running in circles. So if in working at the HC, the model that I developed, there is a reason there's 4 stages. They are joining, they are stabilization, they are reparenting, and they are integration. Those are not linear. And if you've been with me a while, you know that because I've taught it to you. It's circular. It just gives us a map. It lets me know where I am so that I know where I'm going. Because when I feel crazy and when I'm surviving, I can't see the forest for the trees. But what I do know is my recovery teaches me, okay, these are my red flags. I'm trying to control everything. Side note, I'm trying to do a meeting when I'm supposed to be on vacation, which is why I decided to not do the meeting last week. I can be very successful and very productive in survival, and it still does not benefit me. Because my ultimate goal is to heal my body for stabilization, for sustainability. And the more I put her through and the more I take on, I'm capable of a shit ton, but that does not mean that I'm supposed to be doing it. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn are those red flags. The more I learn about my body, my behaviors, how I interact with my world and my relationships, the more I can see those red flags and I have a state of consciousness to be able to do something about it. Remember, recovery is not always about abstinence. For some people it is. Please hear me say that. And my program is about emotional sobriety. So what that looks like for me is going to look very different than what it looks like for other people in other recovery programs. The more I connect my dots of my story and what I need, recovery in Amber's world means it's the gift of awareness. The more I learn about my story, the more I connect my dots, the more I'm the one that knows what to do. I have the map. Now, it doesn't mean I always do it by myself because that's part of my pathology. I do it myself. Damn it. My recovery says I do it in partnership. My recovery says I lean in and trust my safe people. My recovery says sometimes I have to say no. And I don't always like that. So when we are living in a state of functional freeze or in a state of functional survival, oftentimes, to the other request that was in the chat, clients come in and one of the first things they say to me in an assessment is, I don't know what I like. I don't know what I don't like. I don't know what I want. I could probably tell you what I don't want. And if you know me, I jump right on that and I say, there we go. That's the door in. At least you know what you don't want. So it was just a reminder tonight of just because I have 20 years of recovery doesn't mean I don't fall into survival. It means that I have the map to know what to do when I'm there. And it also means I usually get out of it a lot quicker than I did the first time, or I'm really stubborn, maybe 50 relapses that I've had. So it's the map. And the more I practice getting out of it and getting back into my program, the better I get at it. It's just like a muscle. I do want to speak into, I get this, not directly this question, but I get asked the question about what does relapse look like, especially if we are aware of our substance or our behavior and we're working on trauma recovery, ACA recovery, codependency recovery. Those are all synonymous, by the way. The reason that I use substances and behaviors is because I'm trying to numb the pain of the trauma. Trauma is the root of codependency. It's unmet emotional needs, physical needs, mental needs. And the older we get with that developmental trauma, the more painful it becomes as we go through those life stages. So we have to up whatever our numbers and medicators are. For some of us, those are substances. For others, those are behaviors. So as we look at things like relapse, while it can look different for most people, personally, for me, I think it's another commonality. I think, number one, what I teach about addiction, and I hate that word. If you know me, that's addiction is not the wound. That's a symptom of the problem, and it's how we're trying to live with our unhealed traumas. But when I am in a relapse, my relapse isn't just about my substances or my behaviors, meaning if I'm drinking, if I'm overeating, if I'm gambling, if I'm overworking, whatever my number and medicator is, that can show that I'm in a relapse. I'm a recovering workaholic. So owning two companies, I have to be very careful. What does that look like on a daily basis? And how does it, are my priorities in alignment? If I'm working more than I'm doing the things that I love to do, there's a problem with that. Relapse with emotional sobriety was a lot of what I was talking about in the first section. or the first part of our talk tonight, where I can be rewarded and be in a relapse at the same time because I can be very productive. I can be on it. I can be benefiting a lot of people, or a lot of people are benefiting from what I'm doing. And the way that I gauge a relapse is there is shame and pain. Shame and pain. I want to invite you to please remember that shame is the one primitive emotion that we have that we don't recognize. And it is why most of us are back in a relapse before we feel the pain. There is this expectation we're supposed to know what to do, or we should have seen it. We should have known. And it doesn't matter how many times we bump our head. It doesn't matter how many times I bump my head. There's still shame in that. I will still weaponize it against myself. Damn it, Amber, you're a therapist. You should know this. You got 20 years now, Am. Come on. That critical parent voice doesn't go away, because just like survival mode, it serves a purpose. There is still a need in my body for that to exist, because there's still an injury or there's still a wound that hasn't been healed. Why many of us work recovery for the rest of our life. Because I want to work towards my highest and truest self. I want to remember who she is. We all came into this world in that way. And it's not always about becoming. Sometimes it's about remembering. So when we are in a relapse, shame and pain are the indicators, and the behaviors will look polarized. It's going to be my fault or it's your fault. There can't be a negotiation. There's not a lot of gray area. When I am, I'm trying to use an example for emotional sobriety. When I am overworking, one thing that I have to be really careful of is AI. Because much like Canva, I'm being halfway sarcastic with this, so you can laugh. Much like Canva, I can fall in a fucking black hole for 6 hours with AI. No joke. Now, what happens after that 6 hours? I have a whole program built, the marketing funnel, the manual, everything. That would have taken me weeks or months previously without it. Okay, Am, so what's wrong with that? Much like when we talk about numbing and medicating, the goal is not to make it all go away. That's not possible. We're a fucking culture of numbing and medicating. The goal is to do it intentionally, and it not to cause harm to me, and it not to cause harm to someone else. That's our barometer. If I can lay here and watch 3 episodes of Cupcake Wars and my kids are old enough to play outside, or my husband's here, no harm done. But my ass sits for 6 hours on Claudia, who is my version of Claude, because I don't know why all AI things are men, by the way. I got a problem with that. Nobody asked me, though. Claudia, my hips hurt so fucking bad, I can hardly walk the rest of the day. That's a consequence to me. That is not okay for me. And while to some other people, that's like, well, Am, that's not like picking up a drink. No, you're right. But part of my problem as an ACA or in someone with complex PTSD is I hurt me before I hurt others. So no, it's not fucking okay for me to sit there for 6 hours on AI and then physically be in pain for the rest of the day. That is not my truest and highest self. I'm not honoring me. I'm not honoring my body. I'm self-harming. So when it comes to relapse, it's about shame and pain, and it's about causing harm to me and or causing harm to others. And when I am in a relapse, because as a recovering codependent, it's going to happen, it's my default, I don't stay there as long as I used to. And that is my recovery. Recovery does not mean I'm abstinent for the rest of my life or I have emotional sobriety for the rest of my life. That is not the definition. Recovery is the gift of awareness. And when I'm in it and I have gone back to default, I can see it, I have my map, and I get back in alignment. That is recovery. And I can do that as many times as I need to. In a few weeks ago, I can't remember when it was, but we talked about self-compassion and that being a part of the recovery process. When I'm in survival, that is one of the guidelines and tools to get back in alignment is, there is no project that right now needs you for 6 hours. There's not. And so doing that to my body is not okay. And if I'm using that guideline of self-compassion, what would that look like? Well, what it looks like is I'm neurospicy and I love that shit. I love Claude. I also love my job and what I do. So it makes it kind of hard for me to put boundaries in place with it. But what it looks like is I have to set a fucking timer on my phone and I have to get up when it goes off. Otherwise, I will be suffering later. So I'm using that as an example, not because I assume everyone's in it, but just so that you can color in your relapse. What does your relapse look like for you? How does your shame and your pain show up? Is it emotional pain? Is it physical pain? And what would your self-compassion guideline be? How could you support yourself so that it doesn't have to harm you so bad? And I know it's easy to notice when I harm others because we're human. That's what we do. We don't want to hurt other people. We want to fawn and people please. And every time that I was in a situation or a relationship that something I did caused harm to others, I had already caused harm to me way before. So the self-compassion is what protects people I love because it's allowing me to take care of me and protect me. And then that harm to the outside relationships don't happen.